And so my belief is that we can go through it in a very gentle goddess kind of way. We do not need to go through the male lens of it has to be hard and I have to be sweating.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just boils down to that.
Welcome to the Wild and Finally Fucking Free podcast show. This is a space where truth talking gets real, behind the scenes grit of the future humans is laid bare, and we are celebrating and sharing the real raw stories of change agents, neurosparkly people, the witchy wild women, the deep feelers, the unapologetic sensors, the status quo challengers, and the huge-hearted healers and helpers. And guiding you through this wild ride of entrepreneurship and full heart-led contribution to the world is me, your host, Kylie Patchett, aka KP. I am a proudly neurosparkly, natural-born status quo challenger, and I thrive on helping disruptors, rebels, and revolutionaries find their voices, amplify their message into the world, and harness their raw potential, alchemize it into unleashing your full potency. Not only will I be sharing the behind the scenes of some of the most amazing, most status quo challenging thought leaders, I'll also be lifting the veil behind my own business. In 2024, I 18x'd my monthly income. Still blows my mind to say that. And this year I am leaning into how joyful and fun it would be to shift from 6 figures to 7 figures in a quantum shifting year. All through leading from my full unapologetic voice, my unleashed potency, and with my big, wildly lit up heart leading the way every single step of the way. So we are going to share the mess and the magic, the tea on identity shifting behind thought leadership. So together with my guests, I am going to be sharing the mess and the magic, spilling the tea on the identity shifts behind stepping into thought leadership, breaking the ties that bind us, unlearning old patterns, and reweaving brand new ways of living, loving, learning, and leading. We're here to break boundaries, reimagine what's possible, all while collapsing timelines and leading with joy, love, and our fiercest wild woman selves. This is not just a podcast. It is a rebellion. It is a revolution. It is an invitation to join the Mad Hatters collective movement. And by Mad Hatters, I mean all the colourful, creative, gorgeous, world-changing, out-of-the-box humans out there. If you've ever longed to be wild and finally fucking free, this is your sign to lean in. Let's get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited for this interview. We have already chatted for 35 minutes. We should probably have just turned it on. So hello and welcome to you, beautiful Akari Boost. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for having me. This is fun.
We have already been talking about perimenopause, human design, kids coming back to home, animals, all sorts of things. So let's just dive in. For anyone who doesn't already know about you and your beautiful work in the world, can you share who you are, what you do, how you would like to?
Yes. So I coined the phrase emotional biohacker because I love to mix everything together and look at someone from a mind, body, soul perspective, especially when we're talking about the nervous system. So I work with women and I try to help them really learn how to respond to life instead of react to life, which that takes us through so many different little rabbit holes around the why. Why does this happen? So I love to look at root cause of things and move my way through so that we can identify what are those triggers that are really bothering us so that we can take that energy away from them and pretty much change the narrative of what that is.
I just love the whole concept of responding, not reacting. I'm just like, can we just have a little moment, have a little deep breath, feel into how much nicer that feels in the body? And then I want to know, so how, like you combined so many different modalities and I was like, oh, this lady is like a different version of me, like pulls in all of these different threads to look at the individual. I love that you say root cause because before we started recording, I was saying to you about ending up in a medical science field where everything was pulled apart and we weren't ever looking at anyone as a whole. And you do it exactly opposite to that. So what sort of modalities do you, probably hundreds because you've probably learnt so many, but
So in traditional human design, I am a generator. In quantum human design, I am an alchemist.
Ew.
I know, and it's juicy because it really tells you about the person. And like you're an alchemist yourself. And so we bring a lot of different things together.
Yeah.
One of my pet peeves around the healthcare system is exactly that, is that no one ever really looks at the person as a whole. And we're looking at one thing without realizing that we're messing something else up and no one's telling me about it.
Yeah.
And it just creates so many more problems. And so when I am working with you and your nervous system, I am going really against everything that we've been taught. I'm not a one to many people. I am here to work with one individual person because you are very unique. Your nervous system is very unique. There's no way that I can hold space for 10, 20 different nervous systems in one room, and it's unfair.
Yeah.
It really is so unfair. And so what I've done is that I started with breath work because in my corporate life, right, one of the many things that I have gotten myself into, I was the end of my career, of my banking career ended in offshore
Hang on.
banking.
Banking.
I know, wild.
Anyone who's not watching the video, Akari has this beautiful white shirt that's got these red stars on it. And no, you do not fit banking. Sorry to interrupt, but that is what?
Banker. So I ended up in offshore banking for Lloyd's, which is based out of London.
Yep.
And the stress, the amount of stress, the travel, having to juggle family, child, you name it. It's just a lot. It's a lot. And I could not find a way to just release all of that. And it was probably about 2013 when I started to dive into what meditation could be like. And I tried so many different types. I did transcendental meditation and I thought that was so boring. I could not sit for 20 minutes. Gosh, can you believe that? Twice a day, 20 minutes as a generator? What a waste of time. I've got things to do. So
It's not just me.
No, welcome to my world. I was so disillusioned because I was like, when do I feel amazing? When do I get to reap the benefits of these 20 minutes?
Yeah.
And so I was invited to do this breath work meditation and I had no idea what I was getting into. I have this out of body experience. The first time I was able to disconnect my brain from my body, which that never had happened before. And I started traveling into what I believe was probably the cosmos, sacred geometry, like just a bunch of colors. I was like, what in the world is this? And I had gone with my partner and I looked at him and I said, oh my God, this is like an LSD like trip. And he looks at me and he says, okay, when did you? And I said, I don't even know. This is what my body recognizes it as the total LSD trip. And it was just so amazing. It really tapped into a different part of myself. And I was like, God, this is what everybody should be doing. And through the process and through the practice, I realized that people who go to drugs, to alcohol, it's almost like that shortcut to get out of your body, right? When you can actually just do breath work and get there and just be in this blissful space. So as I was doing breath work and going in and out of different groups, I met two women who were getting ready to quit their jobs. They were done with the work. They're projectors.
So they're not
spiritual beings.
Yeah.
And they were just really deep into learning and developing these systems. So they're wonderful. So they had just started their own podcast in 2019. And they were very excited because they were doing breath work with me. And they were like, this is amazing. We want to do this deconditioning through breath work. Yeah. So I was interviewed and it went crazy. It just went really crazy. I kept getting people coming to me asking me for breathwork sessions. And so my question to them was, okay, so what is your type? Do you have your chart? And they were like, no, I have my appointment for my reading in about 3 months. And I was like, I can't do breathwork with you and really focus on your chart. And so I got sucked into this human design space because I couldn't wait for my girlfriends to like get their energy up to do these readings. It was taking way too long. And so as I started to work with these women, we were peeling the layers of a lot of onions that had not been probed or touched. And so a lot of trauma started to come through. And I didn't feel like I was equipped to go there directly.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started going profoundly into the human design and more of a trauma-informed space, learning about heart-centered meditations, learning about sound frequencies. I just really dove into this juicy place of finding ways to support the women that were coming to me because I'm telling you, the level of trauma and the stories that I have had to create safe containers for, there are many times that I have walked out of my office and said, "Oh my God, I feel like I've heard it all." And then I get sucked back in. And so we're talking about deep wounds, deep emotional wounds that women have been surviving and the type of trauma loops that they're stuck in and the narrative of the story that they get stuck in. And so that's what I really tried to tap into because when we start learning about the brain and what a crappy, like ironic story lives in the brain because you don't always remember what happened or the way you remember the hippocampus does a complete turnaround around it. So that's when I started to reevaluate the narrative of my story. The arrogance of my little 20-year-old who's going, the world was against me, and sitting in that victim space. And then that story kept growing and really just taking up space.
Yeah.
And so when I started diving deeper into human design, I realized that I didn't like it. I did not like the vocabulary that Ra used. And so
Doesn't speak to me at all.
boom comes quantum human design. And I pretty much spent about a year and a half diving really deep into quantum human design with Karen Curry Parker. And she's been to me like the pioneer of where do we go from this traditional human design and how do we get to that quantum space? And so that's where I live in. And that's how I travel with people. I have created a collaboration with a shamanic practitioner in Mexico. And we co-facilitate water family constellations.
Ooh, tell me more about that.
Oh, it's just amazing. So water knows it all. Well, Veda Austin is in New Zealand, right?
I've heard that name, yeah.
She does a lot of different things with water. So you definitely have to check her out. And we know from all of the different works that experiments in by that, I forget I can't pronounce his name.
I never do either. The
Yeah,
gentleman,
the Japanese.
experiments, who was the guru of figuring out that energy impacts, yeah.
So Veda has continued this work in a completely different space. Ironically, she'll be here next Tuesday, so I get to go see her talk. But when we talk about water, and water touches everything, and water knows everything, the way family constellations, everything traditional, I guess I just don't do.
Yeah.
So a traditional family constellation, you can either use little figurines or a group of people.
Yes.
With the water constellations, we use a little pool. And the energy of the pool, there's a pump in there that just circulates the water. But when you see the energetics happening right in front of you,
Wow.
you can't make these things up. It's just wild. It's wild. But what it does is that it really changes the narrative and it helps us through our own arrogance. And it helps peel some of the stuff that we thought was happening to shift how you feel about your ancestors.
So
Recognize,
powerful.
recognizing, and this is how I also navigate my breath circles, is understanding that it was not personal. That's a big piece, is none of it was personal. Your mom didn't get up in the morning trying to make your life miserable every day. That's just not what it was. She was in her own trauma cycle.
Yeah, exactly. Geez, this has been
So
such a big part of my perimenopause trauma eruption, uncovering and unfurling. Because you're right, the arrogance and the individual perspective of our little tiny brain that can only sense very limited amounts of the huge oceans of information streaming in at any one time has its whole point is to form a narrative and a story. But often because we are doing that from the individual space, we don't actually see all of it. And so therefore we cannot, and yeah, my experience of that was very much growing up with this deep feeling of just lack of self-worth because of the way that I was parented by one of my parents who was in a trauma cycle, battling addiction, battling mental health. And none of that had anything to do with me, but my brain made it about me. And far out, that story, the limitation that comes with that story is wild. And then when you realize it's just a freaking story, you're like, what have I been doing to myself? All of a sudden. And then what I've found is that then the work was around forgiving myself, not forgiving anybody else, not seeing the pattern and forgiving myself for actually doing almost self-harm or abandoning
the harm that we do to ourselves because of someone else's story.
Yeah.
And how freeing and liberating it is to be able to get to that point of, you know what? Look, everyone.
Exactly.
I'm here to save me. I am here to save me.
Yep.
And that alone is a full-time job.
Yeah. And to figure out who you are underneath the story, though. And I think there's so many things I want to ask you in response to everything you shared. I think I want to go back to human design versus quantum design, because I know of Karen Curry Parker. I've not learned anything underneath her kind of framework or anything. But could you, for listeners, just give us a kind of snapshot of the difference or what attracted you to the quantum human design versus the traditional way of doing it?
Traditional human design was focused on the not self, on the shadow part of who we are not. And the way that I interpreted all of that is it's the loudest part, right? It's the loudest part. It's the one that we always lean into, who I am not.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course, everything reminds us of how imperfect we are. So
welcome to humanness, people.
Welcome to being human. So traditional human design, we can say, is the not self, and quantum design is going into the self. So being so you start as a generator, you start as a manifesting generator, but then you go through the initiation into the quantum space, and then you can become that alchemist, and then you can become that time bender. Because one of the things that traditional human design teaches manifesting generators is that they skip steps, they make mistakes. And so quantum human design says, no time bender. You are here to create shortcuts to life. It may not always work out that way because you're skipping steps, but it is so important for you to continue creating those shortcuts because you help humanity by saving them time and effort. And the other piece with generators and manifesting generators is that manifesting generators have a lot more energy than we do. Busyness is a big thing. And so sometimes we get caught up as generators in that speed space. Yep. We're not here for speed. We're here for sustainability. And the way that we make this good distinction around what is a manifesting generator and a generator is the story of the tortoise and the hare, the race at the same time. But that hare has so much energy.
Yeah.
Trying here, doing that, all over the place.
Yep.
And at the end of the race, we end at the same time, but we both have two different purposes. My purpose is for sustainability. Your purpose is to figure out how you can do so many things in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah, so interesting, hey.
And that is the beauty of having that quantum human design, because there's empowerment, there's sovereignty. Yeah. It allows you to live in that place of yum instead of constantly beating yourself up in the stuff that you're just not.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what,
So
as you're talking, that's what it feels like to me. One is, and this is the same energy I talk about in terms of the whole online business space with some of the things that we're sold or that's spoken about a lot or given a lot of airtime. Is like this, there's something wrong with you. You need to fix it. And there's a way of being that's the correct way of being versus leaning into the full potency of who you actually are and letting everything that you're not just be not what you do. Like that, two very different lenses, isn't it?
yeah, and that's where my work comes in, because what we're trying to do is rewire these patterns, rewire the brain to get out of that space and to really start going into the space of self-compassion and self-love, which are not very easy. It's easy for people to say, hey, you just need to pause. But the reality is that reptilian brain does not want to pause. It wants to fight.
Yeah.
I need to, an open throat, right? I need to be heard.
Yeah.
And the only ones that can remain in that space comfortably could be a manifester and a manifesting generator that are grounded. But they too can go into that space of using their voice and their words incorrectly.
Mm.
My mother is a very defined manifesting generator, and she uses words as daggers. And so, like you, I've had to really decondition, like get myself out of the space of, you don't even know yourself. How do you know me?
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's where my work weaves into human design. There was a really big need for me to be present with a lot of women who are experiencing a lot of pain from a lot of different trauma.
Mm.
And so I've managed to create a framework that works, that allows them to breathe a little. And like I said, I do everything contrary to what the world tells you. So I meet with people every week for 2 hours, because therapy sucks when you're there and you're ugly crying and then someone's like, all right, time. And you're just like,
That's it.
I can't even get my snot together.
Yeah, exactly. Hello.
I may scare the people in the waiting room. It just never felt complete. And so my main focus is, I want you to feel complete. Completion is really where we can create an impact so that you can feel safe to be out in the world.
Mm. So beautiful. As I'm hearing you, I'm coming back to what you were saying about people with alcohol, drugs, etc. That disconnection and trying to not be here or not feel this or not, and not be in the reptilian brain in the story. What would you say? I'm interested. What would you want people to hear that find themselves in the pattern of that addiction or wanting to disconnect or feeling that they don't want to be feeling what they're feeling, and so they're on the surface doing those just keep swimming type of patterns? What would be your invitation to them?
The first thing I want to tell them is that they're not broken. Okay, they're not broken. When we feel so shitty inside of ourselves, we're going to do whatever it takes to feel better.
Mhm.
So God bless you for finding something that allows you to escape feeling like crap first.
Yeah.
They get stuck in a shame loop because society looks down on addiction as if it was something that they purposely are doing.
Yeah, exactly.
All they're purposely doing is trying not to feel crappy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So first of all, honoring why they're there in the first place. And then the second thing that I would say is, it's a nervous system issue. It's a nervous system issue. It's a pattern. It's a behavioral pattern that starts to come through. And if they are interested in breaking some of those patterns, my invitation is to, number one, be a little curious, to be curious about what is lurking inside of you that provokes these feelings. Because we go back to that whole narrative. It's this narrative of, I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I am not lovable, I am not trustworthy, I can't even trust myself. There's just so many different resiliency keys that are broken within the framework of who I am. Not that the person is broken, but they've broken these resiliency keys and really made them a negative thing. So everything is negative. Can't love myself. No one can love me. I can't make wise decisions, and everything lives in that human design chart. So being curious about what this openness and definition means, because you and I have the same centers defined.
Yeah, very, yeah, yeah.
So what that does for us is that it really puts us out there to be victims of a lot of like narcissistic people, because they're not our ideas, but there are ideas that are being planted that sound really cool. And oh, yeah, that's a great idea. And because of that, I've had so many life experiences around, I feel like I've lived a million lifetimes already. Being around my mother, who very defined, right? My way or the highway. And knowing that when I was not around her, I could actually breathe. And so it really breaks everything down so that you understand yourself a little better and stop judging yourself. Being self-compassionate is so hard. We all, it's not like it's like you learn it and you're done. There's
Yeah.
always in levels of stuff that get unearthed. But having the compassion and the curiosity,
Yeah.
I think once you have that little curiosity, then we can start moving through. Dr. David Hawkins created something called the levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
And so watching people go from shame to anger scares a lot of us, but I love anger. I love anger because anger is what really helps us catapult us to the next level of,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be here any longer. I'm not getting your power back.
It's like an alchemical, like fire under your, well, fire inside.
Totally.
That is the
Totally. And of
alchemical
course, the
catalyst.
world doesn't want that. The world doesn't want you to be angry to change all of these different habits that you have, because no one's making money off of you.
No, exactly.
And that's the whole thing I think that really has ignited that fire for me is I'm tired of making people all kinds of money out of my pain.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my goodness. Yes. I'm in the middle of writing a book about this. Yeah. So the whole concept that we
Follow me on that. No, just kidding.
Yeah, exactly. I'll interview you for the bloody book. Bloody book. I'm talking about the bloody book because I've been talking about it since June. Anyway, that's fine. I want to ask, when you're talking about definition in centers, first of all, I just want to, I guess, I know, like, I feel like everyone knows about human design, but not everybody does. And I
Right.
think that the way that I would summarize it, and I'm sure that you have additional layers to add as well, is just, I love leaning into human design because to me, it helps me understand my nature, the way that I'm literally designed. And from a genetics perspective, I'm always saying to people, you are a miracle just by the fact that there will never be another one of you. There's never going to be another one of you. And with that comes this unique frequency and flavor and way of moving through the world and communicating. And I have spent so many years, one of my stories has been like, I'm flaky. I don't stick to things. I'm not actually meant to be sticking to things. That literally my basic understanding of my type is just to experience and experiment and learn and then bring back the lessons. But I've got friends still that are in the same career. I met them in 1998. And I was always comparing myself to them going, what is wrong with me? If I'd stayed there, I would be blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and you would also be deathly unhappy and you wouldn't live where you are and you wouldn't have moved overseas and you wouldn't have probably had kids and you wouldn't like all these things. And
Right.
so as soon as that was the very, very first thing that I learned in human design, I was like, goodness, like the relief. And then it's to me now leaning into it a little bit more of a tool of, it's so funny. Like when you're saying self-compassion, when I can see like in a body graph, oh, these are my strengths. These are the ways that I might be easily influenced. These are all of those different things. Like the self-compassion is, oh, there's actually nothing wrong with the way that I do things. It's just that I'm not meant to be doing things like someone else that I'm comparing myself to. So if you had to, I know that's a very long-winded explanation, but if you had to capture what human design is in terms of, because you said before, it's all in your chart. If someone has heard human design but doesn't really understand what in your chart means, can we start at that basic level? And then I want to ask you about the definition of centers, etc.
So there are 5 different systems that makes this one big system. They're all ancient books of wisdom. The I Ching, which comes from China,
Yes.
the Kabbalah,
Uh-huh.
the Hindu chakra system,
Yep.
Eastern and Western astrology, and then our favorite, quantum physics. And so we're getting bits and pieces from all of these systems, and then we're putting them into this one big system. So it's not a personality test. It's beyond that, because one can become a student of human design and forever be a student of human design. And so many, and from human design, the gene keys were born. So now we're getting all, and from human design, we have quantum human design. So we see so many different things being born from this system. This system takes your birth date, your birth time, and your location, because we want to take a picture of where the planets were 3 months before you were born, which in human design, we believe this is when the soul goes into your mama's body. That's when you're
Always
there.
wondered about that bit on a body graph. Thank you.
Yes, and so that's what we call the unconscious part. It is also the part that we call your life purpose. Okay. So that is the unconscious. That is what, when, your parents say you smile like Aunt Sally, you're like, I don't even know who Aunt Sally is, but okay. But you hear it so often that as the years go by, there's a little bit of wisdom that comes in, but you can't see it, but it's how you show up, but you're not aware.
Yeah.
The other side is exactly where the planets were at the time of your birth. So we're looking at this snapshot 3 months before you were born, where the planets were, and then boom, where the planets were at the same time. And this is how we can calculate your life and your soul purpose, which we call the incarnation cross, which also goes it goes with the gene keys.
Yes.
So the beautiful part of all of this is it gives us an opportunity to see how you are supposed to be in life. If you're a generator, and I'm just going to talk about a generator because you and I are both generators, it tells us that we're here to master the work that we love. And what you were saying about learning a lot of different things, yes, that is part of our profile.
Yeah.
That number 3, it is actually the researcher is not, they're the explorers. In traditional human design, they're called martyrs, which
I know.
doesn't make sense. But there's a little bit about that martyr, right? Because you're constantly crying because people look at you and telling you're always doing it wrong.
Yes.
What are you doing
I'm
now?
a rebel, so I've never listened to them anyway, but whatever.
By design, right? By design.
Yes.
So think about how often you have tried something thinking like, this is it. This is what I'm going to do. And then all of a sudden you're like, ugh, no, moving on. This is it. This looks fantastic. This, no, not
all the time.
But that's part of the whole process. And so in traditional human design, they call that trial and error.
Yeah.
And in quantum human design, we call that trial and treasure.
Oh, that's a nice reframe. I like that.
Because now you get to tell people what works and what doesn't work. And for me, I remember having this life experience and just going, oh, why me? And then, of course, I'm like, why not? Because I can't teach it if I can't go through it.
Correct.
That's the whole process, is I have to have that learning experience myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I laugh about it because I think we are the kids that someone says, don't touch the stove, it's hot. And we go, oh, how hot is hot?
Yeah. Yeah. And can I really trust you? Because I want to learn it from doing it. Yeah.
I want to know that when you're telling me the stove is hot, it's true, it's hot.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of exploration, but there's a lot of fear. So the not self of that line 3 is the fear of making mistakes.
Yeah. It's so funny. Hey, because I'm like, the more I lean into, I'm so enjoying the program I'm running at the moment, because I've just allowed and leaned into and been very open with the fact that we're creating as we go, which I always do. But my map is so loose in this program because I'm literally just responding, creating. And I am having so much fun. And the experience has been so much richer for the people inside of that circle. And I look back at my very first program that I ever ran back in 2011, and it was so structured and tight and planned because I've got that real planner as well. But there was no room for me or anyone else to, unfurl and have a deeper experience. And it's just been such a joy to be like, this doesn't have to be like perfectly perfect. So even the sales page, I was like, I'm not even really going to try it, this sales page, because I'm going to talk about what my intention is. And absolutely that intention will unfold. But the way that unfolds, I have no freaking idea. I literally do not know. I know the key things that I want to teach, but I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But it's been fun. I'm so enjoying it. I'm like, oh, okay, now I get this.
So I'm curious, do you feel that evolution, like that whole evolving of I am not here to be like really told what to do or kept in a really tight little box. I'm really here to experiment what works for me and what doesn't. And the people who are called to me are really
Yeah.
going to want to join.
Yes. And there's been a much deeper, like, understanding what is my end of what I think of as my business, what is the potential person that might come into the circle's business, and also what is universal business. Because I'm like, I am not in charge of the magic that allows people to just find me at a particular time or be magnetized or whatever. All I have to do is be myself as much as I learn more and more about how I can be even more of myself. And that's what I'm teaching anyway. So I'm, as always, you're always on the front edge of the expansion that you're also inviting people into. But the other thing that I've been trying to emphasize that's been really cool to feel is not having to, I've ever felt like I need to provide answers. It's not ever been like that, but there's been what's the feeling? It's like less feeling of responsibility to provide something and more understanding that a lot of the transformation just comes from being in the circle with me and co-creating with other people. And so there's like this, because there's an over responsibility pattern in my life it's not a new thing, but that has been so cool because there's so much less internal pressure. So then I can just lean into this joy, juicy, flowy.
I totally get it. So for me, the way that shows up is my zone of genius is being able to share my knowledge through being able to respond. And so the opportunity of being interviewed on a podcast is wonderful for me because I can respond to things.
Yeah.
Like me putting myself on a video and just talking to the video out of nowhere feels very awkward.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what I did is I created what I call Wild Woman Wednesdays.
Ah, cool.
And I don't have to do anything but invite facilitators to come and show. And so I'm just the middle person. I get to learn with everyone and I get to bring all of these amazing people. But that is my version of a podcast where there are no rules.
Yep.
It is very liberating for me. And it doesn't work for everyone because I'll say, you can do whatever you want. You have an hour and a half. And they're like, but that's a sacro being. It's overwhelming. So I've created a little form for them so that they can respond to what feels good. But I do it. This is your hour and a half. This is my community that wants to just hear you do whatever. They have no expectations. They're just here to learn.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah. It's freeing.
Yeah. Feels very playful, doesn't it? Very different energy to the structure and I get the same thing. Yeah, exactly. Which is how I used to live. Literally. If I look back at my 20-year-old self, or even when I met my husband, we've been married 25 years next week. And I used to be so anal about things that even like on a Saturday, like the Saturday morning would have to be, we clean and we do this and we do. And I'm like, oh my God. It's how I was brought up. I was brought up by one parent who was extremely structured, long-term army person, actually ran the house like 5 a.m. I was woken up with like one of those bike, like really loud.
God.
The breakfast was at 5:30.
I'm surprised you don't have a nervous tick.
Actually, I really love structure too, though. So there's a part of me that really loves that. And then there's an equal and opposite part that loves that freedom thing. So it's just, figuring out or feeling out how much of each is needed or that I desire. I love that you just invite people in. I have the same thing with this podcast. There is some people who do not cope with no plan of where to go. Like they want to know pre-formed questions. And I understand and honor that. And I always will come back with, I just trust that the invitation, the fact that you've said yes to this invitation means that you have something to share and we will just unfold it in real time. But for Yeah. Some people that's very uncomfortable, but most of my guests know. And so I'm always happy to play with someone who is also like, I'm interested for your own feeling into what quantum human design has helped, and also breathwork and everything else that you bring to the table. What's unfolded and softened in your own story, identity, way that you shift through the world? Such a big question. How long have you
That's a
got?
great question. Thank you for asking that because, again, I am a 1-3 sacral generator. The 1 is the researcher and 3 is the explorer.
Yes.
They are very tricky because the researcher will go, look at this. And my explorer will go, let's try it out. So
Yes.
I've tried a lot of different things. And the reason why my framework is the way it is and it continues to evolve is because it works.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah.
And it's a root, like I'm going to the root of it. And that is what I had to do with my own self because I grew up with a mom with a lot of narcissistic traits because of that definition and her own trauma that she kept bringing into her parenting. So the one thing I believe that a lot of us inherit from our parents is a dysregulated nervous system. And there was a lot of chaos growing up. And she, even to this day, she has managed to make her life so much more complicated than it needs to be. So from a very young age, I had to be the fixer of everything. And of course, because you have that 5, that line 5 makes you the fixer.
Yeah.
I have a lot of line 5 energy compounded even in my variables. And so what that does is there's a lot of unspoken expectations that are placed, and I'm the oldest. So unnecessary crap that I've had to take care of, which makes me the adult now that wants no responsibilities. I'm like, I'm done.
Lives.
Checking out right now. No. So in order for me to be able to have a relationship with her, I had to do a lot of that work. So what happened is the compassion started to grow when I downloaded her chart. And I could see like she was so rigid and lives in the shadow of who she is that she gave herself rheumatoid arthritis. And when you start to learn the energetics of that, there's a lot of anger, a lot of rage, and it is all justified. It is all justified. It's just not okay for her to have done what she did to express it. And in order for me to heal from that, I really needed to do the breath work to start to get me. It was what the awareness started to bring in, and all of these different emotions started bubbling. And then the somatic component of it. I've done a few, my own handful of family constellation therapies, and they have been phenomenal in releasing a lot of the stuff that just didn't serve me.
Yeah.
Then human design, for me, it allowed me to see my strengths like permission slips of, oh, I can do this. Oh, I'm not doing it wrong. Hearing my parents constantly say, can you just decide what you're going to be when you grow up, but just stick with it? And it was like, there's so many things like, no, like, why would I?
Yeah, why?
And everyone was coming from a place of fear.
Yeah.
Everyone. And so that is how I've been able to really do a lot in this work. I started working with an institute in Northern California. It is called the Heart Math Institute.
Oh, yes. I've read a book about math. Yes, I know it.
So I've been working with them for a handful of years now. And what I do with my clients is that each of my clients gets a biofeedback sensor that connects through their ear and connects. And we're measuring heart rate variability and beats per minute. And we're just doing these very easy techniques on how to align the heart and the brain, because the brain has its power. The heart brain is underutilized, yet for ages, all of our indigenous cultures have taught us that the heart is where we need to be making decisions. The heart is very revered. We also have that gut brain, but that gut brain, we're talking about parasites, all of these other things that definitely override everything else. But with the heart brain, we start to recognize that we make decisions with our brain, and our brain's wearing trauma goggles. the number one job of the brain is to keep you safe. So when you're making these really big decisions, are you making decisions that are in your highest and best interest? Or are you making decisions that are going to keep you safe? That's really where we need to tap into. So using these heart meditations and these techniques, what I am trying to achieve is trying to get you to a different baseline. We measure where you're at and then we try to get there. And through heart rate variability, we can actually see if there's something coming. So I look at the waves, I identify things. And so I've only had one person I'm currently working with that her resting heart rate is like at 90. And I'm like, what is going on here? So we're definitely diving deeper because she's stuck in that fight flight response.
Of course, because that's where
And the
she's
one
living.
thing and the one thing that we need to recognize is that the number one killer of humans, men and women, is cardiovascular.
Yeah.
And of course, understudied is women.
Women. Yes.
So this gives me a good indication of a lot of different things. And so her next move is to see a cardiologist. And then on top of that, to get a cortisol test to see how
Yes.
much cortisol is running in there.
Yeah.
And of course, because I'm working with women who are in that perimenopause, menopause era, I want her to also start testing, to start checking with what do they call those CGMs that they
Oh,
just,
yes.
the glucose
Glucose.
monitors,
Yeah.
just so that we can see when these spikes are happening.
Mhm.
So I think if I didn't have that curiosity of root cause, so many things go under the radar. And this is where my power as a coach comes in, like at a far greater scale than the average person can recognize, because I'm looking at all of these different things. I request that they go do blood work and lab work, and I tell them what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Leptin hormone. The leptin hormone regulates your hunger, your weight. And so I look for things that people don't ask for. And I look for it because I'm looking at you as a whole. I want to see why your nervous system is out of whack and how best we can support your nervous
Yeah.
system. Sometimes it means that you have to have a little more protein than you have had. Sometimes it means being curious about changing into a ketogenic lifestyle, tweaking what we can with what we have in order for you to get the best results.
I love this. The whole concept of root cause, like integrative medicine and the approach that the whole, like even from a traditional Chinese medicine perspective, like if someone say goes to a doctor and says have flat affect, they do the depression scale, they get put onto antidepressants. That's pretty kind of standard sort of approach. In traditional Chinese medicine, I can't remember exactly how many now, but I think there's 6 or 7 like key root causes of the end stage or the symptom of depression. But by putting something over the top of it, you're never actually getting to the root cause. So and the other problem is that also that medication can mask what's actually going on. And so, yeah, the preemptively understanding that this pattern could be meaning something, but paying attention to it. I love that you're talking about from a biomarker. I don't know whether that's markers, but like a bio perspective with a trauma-informed lens, with an understanding that we're actually inviting you to be who you really are through human design and decondition that. It's a very cool approach because it feels much more, I think holistic is a word that is overused now, but truly holistic, like from all angles.
It is a very unique way of looking at it through that lens. And also, you're right, they are biomarkers. I want to look for inflammation in your body.
Yep.
And because I've seen it in my life, I started a ketogenic lifestyle thinking I was going to help my mother,
Yes.
and it changed my life.
That's so interesting, isn't it?
It changed my life because I was being the arrogant kid going, you really should get into ketosis, not knowing what that looked like, felt like, or smelled like. And so I was like, all right, let me try this. And I hired a coach and she walked me through it in a very functional way where you're not just ketogenic, you're carb loading twice a week. So you're cycling through things.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind away at how much better I feel, the impact it has made in my nervous system. How I react versus respond sometimes, and how easily it is to rupture
Yes.
and then still be able to come and fix everything. And it doesn't happen in days any longer. This is, we're talking about, we're sitting there and a rupture happens and we can all sit with that discomfort
Yes.
and mend everything right there and then so that we can move on with our lives.
Yeah.
Because at this point, I'm looking at longevity and I'm looking at how quickly can we move through this so that you're not carrying and staying stuck in a loop of shame.
Correct. Yeah. And I think what we forget to talk about a lot is the nervous system is built to respond to a stress and then return to baseline. But the problem is our baselines are already in, a lot of the time, the stressed zone. So that's our baseline. I find it very interesting in terms of like when you start working with someone with your framework. Actually, let's talk about your framework as well. You've spoken about some of the things that you do, but would you like to share kind of the steps, or how would you capture it for people to?
It's very individualized. It is very individualized because if someone's coming to me and their nervous system is very wound up, so that's the first thing that we go through. We go through teaching you what it is, the response, the brain, all of the different information around that. And as we're going through that, we're going into the techniques and just starting to see where you're at. Once the nervous system starts to settle a little bit, because we're developing a safe container for you, we start diving into human design. And I have this vision board project that we do together where we go through every gate, the individual, the circuitry on the chart, the profiles, everything. We go through it one by one, looking at the shadows of it. And we put it into a little diamond and we put all kinds of information on it. It's out. And through that process, we're tapping, we're doing EFT on everything. And then once we're done with that, it takes us probably about 3 meetings. Then we go into the self. That one, it takes 2 meetings because everyone's so happy.
It's like, finally, I can just relax and be who I am.
Yes. And it's that initiation.
Yeah.
It's that initiation from the not self. And I do it in that way because it allows us to see everything like through a lens and feel crappy about it and grieve through all the gross things that we hate about ourselves. And then all of a sudden we go into the self and we're like, oh my gosh, all these little permission slips, all these little aha moments of, I always knew I could. I always knew I had. And it's yes, and you get to be here. And so from that, we create a vision board, a big vision board of not focusing on the self, but we still put the not self there because you have to go to it whenever you're feeling crummy. You're like, let me go see where I'm at.
Yeah. Hang on a minute.
And then we go into the self and we do the vision board around all of the different things that you know about yourself to be true and that have not been explored. Instead of a vision board around what I want, it's more around who I can be.
Yeah. Leaning into.
So we go through that process and biofeedback sensor at the same time, measuring every day. Then once that is settled, then we can start doing the shamanic work with the constellation. That one is about 2 to 5 hours, depending on what we're working on. And what I love about our work is that she works very similar to myself, which is going to the root cause. So we start with a few themes around things that are in your 3D, and then we go deep to see where the ancestral piece comes out. Who are you unconsciously loyal to?
Oh, that is such a big question. Oh.
And that really, at that point, we start to change the narrative of the story. And we'll do breath work in between. I have a gal who helps you with movement and nutrition. She spends 2 hours with you so that we can continue to strengthen and change these habits. And then we're done because by that time, you're just at a different space. And what I have found out that a lot of people need, not the accountability, but just the sounding board. So I created a program. It's a membership program called Soulful Catch-Ups. And we meet once a month for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And we're just focused on whatever is happening that you just need to be heard and to be seen. And I find that works a lot better than them going to see a therapist, let's say, just for that, because we have a history together. By that time, I know your kids, I know your kids' charts.
And they feel safe too. That's the,
I have one really cool story. I have a client, a former client who, single mom, who was struggling with alcohol.
Yeah.
And through this nervous system work, leaning into turning 1 year sober and just changed her relationship with her 8-year-old daughter.
Yeah, of course.
And it's all based on this nervous system work.
So good. So good. What a gift. And what a gift not only to the mum and the child, but everyone that's, yeah, impacted as a result of that. Generationally as well.
And there's a saying that I've been saying for a long time that says, it stops with me.
Yeah.
But I want to change it. I want to change it because it's not empowering.
Yeah.
I want to start saying, it starts with me.
Yeah. As soon as you said stops, I was like, I'd rather say this.
Yes, it starts with me. I'm the one here who's going to be changing the whole lineage, the trajectory of my lineage. I'm not in charge of my siblings, their lineage. I'm in charge of mine.
Yes.
And there's nothing more satisfying than knowing that it really stops here, but it also starts here.
So good. Oh, I love this so much. I feel like, as we spoke about with your clients being similar age group to we are with the like perimenopause into menopause, do you feel like this is, my lens of perimenopause is very much about reclamation and returning to self and sovereignty and agency and rulership and shedding skins and all of that discernment of what I'm not carrying forward and who I am not. Do you feel like this is something natural that we seek? Is that the lens through which you see this kind of midlife metamorphosis as well?
I think it depends on what work you've done.
True.
I saw my mother raging during this time period, and it wasn't pretty to witness.
Yeah.
So I think we can definitely shift the lens of it.
Yeah.
It's very frustrating. It is very difficult to always be in that positive space. So
Yeah.
I give myself permission to be in the thick of it and also to be a little upset about it because my sleep is just all messed up. It's all over the
Yep.
place. So I don't really, generators, we wake up salty or we wake up great. That's like the on and off, especially if you don't have emotional definition. So to all of a sudden be all over the map, I don't do well with big emotions. And so really this nervous system work has really kept me in a place where I'm really focused on staying neutral.
I love this. I'm interested, as you were talking about your emotional, like the tools that you share with people, and you said that they're quite simple. I'm interested to hear your response to, I know that this happens thanks to social media anyway, that something will have this big upsurge of like, everybody's talking about it. And at least in my kind of perception at the moment, it's very much about like nervous system regulation, somatic tools, et cetera, et cetera. And I also have a very strong reaction to things like everybody should be ice bathing every day and everybody should be doing this and everybody should be doing that. And I'm like, I can tell you right now, when I'm dysregulated, putting me in an ice bath will make me want to kill someone. Literally,
Right.
that feels that uncomfortable for me in my nervous system if I'm like already lower bandwidth. But do you have the similar sort of response? Because it sounds like the internal rebel, is that a 3-line thing? It's, I am not doing this the done way. I reject the done way. I'm not following the rules.
It really depends on the belief system. We live in a culture that if it's not hard and it's not going to make me cry, it's not work.
Yes.
That is why I said I do very easy techniques. And that is what makes it so difficult and challenging for my clients because they want it to be difficult.
I've just had this conversation. I'm apprenticing in an energy medicine training at the moment. And I'm like, why is it so hard for me to lean into simple things that make me feel good? And I'm like, because my set point is to strive. What's the wisdom you'd like to share about that?
It's the conditioning. We're conditioned to have to be in pain in order to earn the right to be anywhere.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way. Really, it doesn't. And I think that's why also the framework that I have chosen is this. I don't need you doing ugly crying in a breathwork circle. If you're ugly crying in a breathwork circle, you need therapy.
Yeah.
And you coming to breathwork is a Band-Aid
Yes.
and you have deeper things that really need to be addressed.
Mhm.
So if you're going to come to a breath circle, I'm not going to be taking you through a crying spell. It's not fair for the rest of the people that you haven't done your work.
Yep.
And no
Yep.
one needs to be carrying this. That being said, it is working on your beliefs. And so my belief is that we can go through it in a very gentle goddess kind of way. We do not need to go through the male lens of it has to be hard and I have to be sweating.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just boils down to that. So I really work at dismantling that belief because we women already have it so hard. We bleed, we don't bleed, we have hormonal ups and downs, and there's just so much, and yet we still show up. Why do we need to prove anything else to ourselves other than it could be slow, gentle, and easy?
Yeah. No, this is, yeah, I feel like that is my biggest lesson at the moment. Just, yeah, allow it to be easy. There's a friend of mine who teaches trading to mostly ladies, and she talks about this whole concept of earning without efforting. And
Mhm.
even though she's talking about it in financial sense, I'm now going, but where am I efforting unnecessarily?
Absolutely.
Where am I striving towards something rather than allowing something? And it's just such a revelation for someone who's always been in a particular kind of nervous system state, let's be honest. And I love so much about I love everything about what you're sharing. I feel like I want to ask, in terms of you've mentioned a few times like the conditioning in terms of conditioning, deconditioning. Can you explain in your terms what you mean by deconditioning? Because I feel like sometimes that word it's used a lot, but I don't know whether I really understand it in terms of its simplest forms, put it that way. Again, that feels like efforting to me. Like when someone says deconditioning, I'm like, how do I do that? Tell me I'm like, oh, okay, something else that I have to put on my list. What is your lens
Right.
of deconditioning?
In human design, breath work is one of the ways of deconditioning, right? And then you have tapping, which is that EFT, emotional freedom technique.
Love tapping, yes.
So that is how they, like in general, like focus on this deconditioning piece. When we talk about conditioning, we're talking about where we gain all of these different beliefs. So sometimes, no, not I can't say sometimes. Most of the time, we're being imprinted by our parents.
Yeah, of course.
We don't know any better. This is how they were taught. And so that just gets passed on. We imprint on our children. So that's the conditioning that's never going to go away.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that and that is what I'm talking about, is challenging those beliefs and saying, okay, it stops with me, whatever it is. So the way I look at it is someone hands you a beautiful family treasure chest, and your job is to go through it and find what brings you joy and discard what doesn't.
Oh, I love that analogy. That feels so good.
So that is one
So
conditioning.
much.
The next conditioning that we have is the tube, the TV that's sitting in your living room that's telling you how many kids you need to have, all these ridiculous TV shows showing the drama, the female catty relationships,
Yeah.
the mother-daughter drama. All of that creates another conditioning,
Yeah.
especially open head people that all of a sudden it's, oh, this is who I want to be. I'm gonna pretend that this is who I'm gonna be now because she looks really cool. Then we have the conditioning of our epigenetics, the generational stuff that comes through.
Yeah.
Then we have life experiences that then starts to creep in, which I consider them the trauma that comes through with our life experiences and shifts and changes our beliefs. So it is challenging all of those things. That's what the deconditioning process is about, is looking inward and wanting to know if that really plays well with how I see life. And if it doesn't play well, giving myself permission to release it.
Let it go. Yeah. I love that description way more than what I've heard before. Thoughts on the whole 7 years to decondition completely? Magic.
The 7 year, I think it's a process. I think someone that had to quantify it in order to have something to aim for.
Yeah.
But it definitely is a process. And I don't think that you ever fully get deconditioned because it's imprinted in you. It's part of your genetics.
This is
It's
why I
like
was wondering then. Yeah. The
It's like
seven.
telling someone who is Jewish to not feel the pain of their ancestry. It's a cultural thing. Like it's in their DNA, it's been proven. Can they work on it? Absolutely. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's not going to get passed on.
Yeah.
When you learn epigenetics, you recognize all of that.
Yep.
And it's important. It's important for us to recognize it and know that we can be better. It's just going to take some nervous system work. Because what is the number one thing that we get inherited?
Our nervous system. I feel like that's my, oh, you've said so many things that I've jotted down as potential quotes, but I feel like that's my kind of, it's something I've always known about. We inherit dysregulation often from our parents. Unless, I don't know, like maybe people don't, but that's definitely been my experience.
And I want to say, and I don't know if this has happened with your parents. I know I haven't seen that with my mother because she's emotionally immature. But when I was spending time with my grandparents, I did get a lot of that co-regulation that I couldn't get from her.
Yeah.
And my grandparents were around our age. So that little wisdom that shifted. And I just consider myself very fortunate to have received the wisdom that I did because that also had a lot of input in how I wanted to parent and how I wanted to be in the world. One of the big things is the anxiety where women are believed to be the ones who need to be anxious. And it's no, that's just a dysregulated nervous system.
Exactly. That's not normal.
No, it is not, but we've
Normalized.
normalized it.
Exactly.
And so I feel very fortunate to have had spent so much time with my grandparents and that my grandparents were of a different emotional health space than my mother because I was able to get a lot more. And I feel like that's what I have become for my daughter is that she cannot get from her.
Yes.
She's getting it from me.
I had the same experience. I had one parent very dysregulated and very unstable, and one parent that was very stable and very regulated. So I got the co-regulation, but I've actually so you've given me a different lens to look through that as well, because I've always felt like that's part of my like swinging from wanting security, wanting freedom, wanting to like it. But I just feel like it's a far more powerful and positive lens to say I did receive co-regulation, because I have often thought if both of my parents were like dysregulated to that extreme, I would be a very different human. I don't think I would be functioning as well as what I am in the scheme of things.
In all fairness, though, give yourself some credit. You were born with resiliency.
Yes, definitely. And it's definitely been a gift with my own parenting, like you just said. Like I have had an extremely good example of how I don't want my kids to feel ever. Yeah, so it's been a very big blessing as well. Yeah. The thing that I'm carrying away from this conversation, so many threads, the main one is just the narrative and the story and the version of events that our brain learns versus this permission slip of you can actually review and decide. The treasure chest is such a beautiful, I love that. I love the visual and the storytelling aspect of that you can actually, you don't have to take the whole thing on.
You don't. That's what's so fascinating. And I went no contact with my mother for many years because there was a lot of stuff that I needed to be on my own and heal. And it wasn't going to happen with her in my face.
Yeah, I do similar. And it was.
And I did it without any guilt. I feel no guilt whatsoever because I chose me.
Yes. And we should never feel guilty about that. Thank you. We didn't get time to do conditioning in the centers. Maybe we'll have to do a part 2 sometime down the track. But thank you so much for bringing your wisdom to the table. It's just such a joy to hear someone speak about a whole person and not having this 5-step magic framework that you put on every single person, because I just feel like there's so much disrespect and the richness with which you partner with people so that they, like you use the word sounding board, but just to have that safe circle to be able to do this work in feels very cool to have been able to, witness you speak about. So thank you. For people who don't know how to find you, what would you like to share? Is there something you'd like to share, or a website link at the very least?
I've created a lot of different things, but one of the things that I created was my quantum human design chart that comes right off of my website.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So it is Akari, UHKARE.com. And through that space, you can get a free general report from there.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
I am in the process of creating more of a nervous system connection with what it means to be a generator, a manifesting generator, and so forth.
So
But I'm doing it in my voice. So I'm actually doing these reports and recording them so that you can hear my voice and you can just. I imagine someone putting their headphones and going for a walk when they just need to learn more about themselves as something they can tap into. And that's coming. It's just a lot of work.
yeah,
But once they're there, they get to download that report. And if they want to if they're not ready for a reading or they're like you and I, they just want to dig deeper.
yeah.
There's a 60 plus page report that's personalized that they can definitely invest in. That everything comes with a 20-minute call so that you can see me face to face and ask me questions and we can see if what is going on in your life that could help you decide whether or not working with me is the next best step for you.
Beautiful. Oh, so good. So many juiciness. Actually, you've just reminded me something that I wanted to revisit from something like I wrote a book about this back in my first iteration of my business in about 2014, I think it would have been, is tying the ways in which women in business get in their own way through the lens of was mindset coaching then, so very much fear-based story. But I did it through the chakra system. And as we're talking, I'm like, and that's why human design makes so much sense to me because
Yes.
overlaying ancient wisdom. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Very cool.
Definitely.
Yeah. What
Definitely.
a cool way. See, I started the day getting up too early,
I
but
know.
you have been a
But-
gem. So thank you for sharing your gold with us.
And my favorite place to practice with people is really Instagram. It's short and sweet and doesn't take all day.
Yes, exactly. So good. All right. We will include all of those links. Thank you so much for your time and generosity.
Thank you. This was really fun. I feel like it feels very much like home.
Yes. Yeah. I find, yeah,
Right.
I'm meeting lots of people at the moment. Actually, I was just listening to astrology this morning, something on Instagram that I popped onto, and it's like, you're meeting all these like soul connection collaborators. And I'm like, yes. So there's a lot of threes in my life all of a sudden, and I've not been around them very much. So
This is a moment of evolution. We're evolving, and I am noticing that the manifestation is happening a lot faster than it
Yes.
was before.
very much. Yeah.
So there's a lot of moving pieces that are going in the right direction and they're just falling into place. So it's very exciting to be in this space. And like I said, the one human design podcast that just really put me into the human design world was not trauma informed. And so I've come a long way to really bring this in a way that has integrity and that is here to serve the people.
Thank you.
And my girlfriends, so they're young, right?
Yeah.
They're young. They're in a completely different cycle of life. So I just really appreciate being able to show up with women who I know I can help. I can help the 30-year-olds. That's not a problem. But it's
Yeah.
just really being there for the rest of our women who, we Generation X, right?
Yep. Yep.
So, yeah. So it's just very different. We show up different. Our resiliency is different. And I'm always really happy to walk with someone hand in hand and really get them to feel better about themselves.
Good. Thank you so much. What a blessing. Beautiful conversation.
I'm so happy we connected.
Bye. There you go, beautiful one. Another delicious, juicy, truth-talking episode with a disruptor rebel or revolutionary sharing the identity shifts and the mess and the magic of leading right on the edge of your expansion and going first as a visionary leader, as a woman creating a business and inviting people to completely new ways of learning, living, loving, and leading. It is not lost on me that you have invested your time and your energy in listening to the show. I am so grateful for your beautiful heart, for the work that you do in the world. And I know that if you're here, you are more than likely one of what I call the Mad Hatters. So the quirky, colourful, creative, out of the box, often neurosparkly, paradigm shifters and thought leaders. So I'm so grateful that you're here. If you loved this episode, which I'm sure you did, please do me a favor and share it with someone else who needs to understand that their quirkiness and their full unapologetic self-expression is more than enough, and in fact is the secret sauce to growing a wildly successful, abundant, nourishing, sustainable business. So here is to us, the Mad Hatters, the crazy out-of-the-box people saying no to old paradigms and inviting into the new. And if you'd love to go the extra mile, please make sure that you subscribe on the platform that you're on so you never miss an episode. And hey, it would be sweet, sweet, sweet if you would leave us a 5-star review. It means the world to us, and it helps us get this truth talk and this magic and this power out to even more Mad Hatters. So have a beautiful day, and I will speak with you next week.